So anyway, one year, my dad and I dropped my brother off to meet Steve and some of Steve's new friends in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We left them in a cheap and dumpy hotel that reeked of old, cheap beer, where everyone in the place was probably quoting risky business and yelling about how awesome Porsches were. It was the 1980s, after all. To my 15-year-old eyes, this hotel looked like heaven on earth. It was spring break, and there were pretty girls in bathing suits walking up and down the streets. And then someone told me that Vanna White from Wheel of Fortune was originally from Myrtle Beach. My mind was literally blown. If you are not familiar with Myrtle Beach, it is a resort town on the South Carolina coast, known for its golf courses, family vacations, and having a bitchin' spring break. If you are not familiar with the concept of spring break in Myrtle Beach, it is the week when college kids from southeastern schools flock to the beach before the tourist season officially begins and pretend it is warm enough to walk around in bathing suits constantly, drink their faces off, and do nothing but try to get laid. The locals are all scandalized, but all too happy to collect the money these dumb kids bring in, as long as they leave as fast as possible when the week ends. When we got to the hotel room where we were going to leave Flynn, AC/DC was blasting on somebody's radio. Steve's friends were all drinking beer, and holy shit, they were actually talking about how awesome Porsches were. Somebody actually quoted the line, "Porsche, there is no substitute," from Risky Business. I couldn't believe it. It was too perfect. My brother was being presented with the promise of fun, sun, and pretty ladies. Then Dad handed him a $100 bill and said,
"Don't drive. Be careful. Have fun."
"Thanks, Pop,"
Flynn said, closing the door on my dad and me, leaving us in the crisp spring wind of South Carolina. Staring at that grimy hotel door and with the sound of half-drunk 18-year-old guys' voices sailing in the breeze, I felt very jealous. How the hell did my brother get to stay in that gorgeous, moldy room and get loaded while I hit the road with Pop going God knows where? So, where are we going again? I asked.
Ocracoke,
he answered.
It's an island just off the coast of North Carolina. It's part of the Outer Banks.
And who told you about this place?
Barb Randolph's boyfriend, Farley.
Barb Randolph is a wonderful lady and one of the crowd that my parents run around with. She was dating a guy named Farley, whom I had not managed to meet at this point in my life. And after this vacation, I made it a point to never meet him. "Oh," I said, not convinced by this man named Farley or his advice. My dad, sensing my unease, figured he'd better come up with something to make this trip sound more appealing.
He's a birdwatcher.
Who's a birdwatcher?
Farley, the guy who told me about this island.
So we're going to go to a place that we've never been because a birdwatcher said it's good?
Yeah, should be fun.
I could tell my dad was trying to convince himself, too. My dad and I drove down to the ferry and put the sweet red Honda CRX on the boat. It was cold on the water. Spring seemed to be more robust inland, but the ride was nice enough until it started to get really foggy and even colder. After about 45 minutes heading straight out into the ocean, I asked my dad how far we had to go. He pulled out some sort of itinerary map or schedule.
Oh shit, this place is a little farther than I thought.
How far?
2.5 hours.
Oh my fucking God! Yeah, we were a swearing family. What's the big fucking deal?
It's not a big deal, buddy.
We're gonna die at sea! This was a pretty big barge we were on, and I suddenly realized that there were only 4 cars or so on the whole thing. Because almost no one was going to Ocracoke except for the red-faced captain, who definitely drank vodka for breakfast and who was definitely not focused on driving the goddamn barge. My dad said,
"Geez, relax. It's going to be fun."
But I could see in his eyes that my dad was worried, and he was probably also a little annoyed that I was being such a whiny little dick. I don't think I was a dick super often, but because I loved my dad so much, I was very sensitive to when he thought I was being a dick. I didn't like making my dad mad, so I tried to focus on my breathing as I watched the fog from the shitty death barge we were trapped on. We did make it to Ocracoke alive, in what felt like 72 hours later. The island was small, quiet, cold, and foggy. Come on, Farley, what the fuck? And so much worse than Myrtle Beach that I could not believe my eyes. There were no girls in bathing suits, no beer-drinking teenagers, no cheap motels reeking of cheap beer and broken dreams.